All right, welcome back to the Board Drill Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Kyle Bradburn. With me is my co-host, Matt Dixon. Tonight, our special guest is Coach Dean Davidson, who's the OC and O-line coach at Dresden High School in Tennessee, and he's also the author of The Wide Zone Warriors. Coach, welcome to the Board Drill.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to actually talk some pass game for once. Everywhere else I've been, we're always talking about offensive line or run plays. So interested to talk about throwing the ball a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely, Matt. I was a little late on it. He started talking before, but I need to get the applause, and so let's give him an applause real quick. Well,
yeah.
Tonight, Coach, we're going to talk about some flood variations, and really how we got on this was you were tweeting about it the other day, and you said some season study was you were going to look into some more different ways of doing flood variations, and like always, I saw an opportunity. I DM'd you. I was like, "You want to do it on the Board Drill?" So we linked up. Here we are. So we're excited to talk about it tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to you. Let's start talking some flood variations, and we'll see what we get into.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen.
The old infinite mirror.
Yeah. Got to make sure I can get that, though, so I can get my stuff up here, too. So when we're thinking about flood, it's at least, the way I think about it and the way I think most people kind of generalize flood is we're really trying to, people talk about beating zone coverage by flooding the zones, especially like cover 3, you want to flood the underneath zones, try and get 4 guys to cover 5. They can't do it. But we're thinking about flood concepts specifically. Generally, they have the connotations of we are looking to get an outside vertical stretch on the defense, really trying to get an offensive player in each of these areas, kind of up the sideline deep, up the sideline to kind of an intermediate area, and then another receiver in the flat route. Because at least as far as zone coverages go, there's not anything that can cover it, right? No cover 2, cover 3 is going to have somebody specifically for all of these zones. So it's like you said, I was kind of just drawing some up the other day and thinking about expanding the package because even though I took this offensive coordinator job in mid-June, so I had to really streamline what I wanted to install, and flood was actually not originally part of that base install because it wasn't really going to fit how I was going to teach my quarterback the progressions and the way. So I'll just draw up a simple flood right here, probably the one that everybody would run the most, just a regular go on the outside. 10, 15, 12 yard out on the inside and flat from number 3. The way that I was teaching my quarterback progressions to start with was he was going to read, we were going to have a play side deep route, a play side short route, some route kind of over the middle, and then we'd have a backside high-low as well. That doesn't really fit flood. So all the passing concepts I was teaching to begin with were going to have guys in these 5 areas, a Y cross, mesh. We were going to end up with guys in those 5 areas. Well, week 1 hit, and my starting quarterback got hurt. The backup quarterback, who turned out to be a phenomenal running back for us this year, had to kind of take over for a couple of weeks, and he like I said, he became our running back. Did a really good job for us. Really excited to have him back, and he's more of a move the pocket kind of guy when he has to get in there at quarterback. So one of the things that I think that I've done in the past, other places that I've been, and a lot of teams that really like flood, really like to roll to it. Get the running back out here in the protection on the edge, sealing the edge for the quarterback. And then we've got 3 guys plus the quarterback as a rushing threat. So that's really how we got it installed to begin with. Quarterback gets hurt week 1, trying to teach progressions at that point kind of goes out the window. We're trying to figure out different ways. But what I really like about flood is I think that it does fit regardless of how you want to teach the quarterback, whether it is a pure progression, whether it is a defender read. That's kind of been a big debate on Twitter recently, pure progressions versus defender reads. Really appreciate Kurt Warner and his willingness to kind of engage with us, high school coaches and even middle school coaches on some of that stuff. I've had a couple conversations with him about that. I really appreciate him for that. Yeah, he's awesome.
He's great on Twitter. One night he got in the middle of a giant argument that we accidentally started. Like, we started a thread and a bunch of coaches got in an argument on it, and Kurt Warner hopped into it. And I was like, did we just start a thread that Kurt Warner ended up in? Yeah. And literally, we tweeted the first thing and everybody went at it. And it wasn't like anything controversial. I forget what it was. And it ended up with someone arguing with Kurt Warner. And I was like, wow, look where we're at, boys.
It
Yeah.
became controversial.
It did.
Being a Rams fan, I would never really argue with Kurt Warner. He's kind of a legend.
No. Look, again, it was one of those things where like we tweeted something and everyone else got into it. I got to go find it eventually. And I forget what the original topic was, but we were like, how did this happen? So Anyway, sorry to cut you off there.
No worries. So he's been really big putting out there about reading defenders as opposed to pure progressions. But I think that, kind of regardless of which one you do or which one you want to teach, it kind of ends up being read the same way, at least as far as flood goes. So if you're reading it, generally most people would read it top down, right? If we're thinking pure progression, you're going to read go to, 15-yard out to your flat route. But even if you're reading, at least how I'm teaching my quarterback now with defender reads, because that's kind of what I think he's better at. You're going to read the safety, right? You're going to read the safety. Does he bail to cover the go, or does he nail down on the out? All right, if he bails to cover the go, let's back up. Let's say he nails down to cover the out. Then you've got one-on-one with your go route, and assuming, so I've actually started teaching this too as a kind of a read route, so that if the safety does come down, I like a post a lot better than a go up the sideline. I think it's an easier throw for the quarterback. I think it's a higher percentage throw. So we can break that, as long as it's got to stay pretty skinny though, because we don't want a middle field safety to be able to come into that. And that's where the read would come in. If there is a defender still in the middle, then you keep it on the go. If the middle field's open, then you can take it with the post. So that's what I'll be teaching them moving forward. We didn't quite get there, this season, but that's what I'm going to be moving into this year, is this kind of read go route. The quarterback, if he's looking for defender reads, like I said, he's going to key the safety. If the safety comes down to cover the out, then we can see what we've got on the go. If the safety stays high to go, generally safeties, what's the one rule for anybody who's playing deep coverage is don't get beat deep. So he's probably bailing out. And so if he's bailing out to sink under a post or to cap a go, whatever, then now you're reading whoever this apex defender is, right? Normally it's going to be an outside linebacker, especially to trips right here. He can't cover the out and the flat. So whichever one he decides to take, the quarterback's going to throw the other one. So like I said, whether you're teaching defender reads or pure progression, it kind of fits up that way. It kind of plays out the same way. You're looking to throw the go first, and then if the go's not open, then you're kind of ideally getting to throw the sail route 2 and the flat route 3. So what I was drawing up on Twitter the other day was just different ways to get to that, because especially at the high school level, and we're a run first offense. So we're not just going to have 200 different passing concepts in anyway. So what I'm drawing up is, like I said, flood. We want to get different people. We want to get people in these 3 areas. It doesn't always have to be the same people from the same alignments. So like I said, I was drawing up on Twitter the other day. Maybe we're still going to have him on a go, but maybe now we're going to make number 3 the out and number 2 the flat, or maybe you make that a bubble. And this will do different things to different coverages. How aggressive are they going to play a flat route? If the safety is going to stay high and this outside linebacker apex guy is going to jump the flat route, then maybe we can hit this sail, right here, right in an open window, and catch and run for a little bit. So that would be one way. Maybe we don't always want to make the outside receiver the go route, so you can kind of turn it into a slot fade with a sail route to make the number 2 kind of your deep receiver. There's plenty of different ways you can get to different flood combinations, and it doesn't even have to be out of 3 receivers. Maybe we bring this guy in the backfield and we've got a twin set, and he's going to run the flat maybe from the backfield. You could get a switch release kind of idea here, but we've still got a deep route, an intermediate route, and a flat route, a short route. There are so many different ways to get to this play. And like I said, we're not just going to have a ton of different pass plays. So what I want to be able to do is I call them utility plays. What are a small amount of plays that work against darn near everything that we can get to and kind of teach the same way. So a lot of ways that this will be done is naming concepts in families, and that's what you would have seen on my post the other day. They all kind of had to deal with, waterways, ocean, etc. So the quarterback would know. He might not even know exactly which receiver is going to be in these areas pre-snap. He might not even know that, but he knows that because it's in that family, he's going to have a deep route. He's going to have an intermediate route. He's going to have a flat route. He's going to know that he's going to read the safety to the linebacker, to the outside linebacker, because that is the concept family. So that's kind of a brief introduction there to flood, kind of why I like it. Let's see. We're going to go hide that.
Kyle, you're muted.
Yeah, you're muted. I can't hear it.
Yeah, I'm over here talking to myself. Well, that was the first mistake of always being a podcast host there.
Isn't that a majority of your day?
That is.
You're talking to yourself?
Yeah. Yep. So there it is. Sorry, Coach. So let me cover it here. The first thing is using the term utility plays, I think is fantastic, right? These plays are all pretty good against everything. These are our kind of core set of utility plays. I love that. But then the willingness to look at what flood is, right? Because I think this is great coaching. Like, look, flood is, right, deep, intermediate, and short, and say, all right, what are 3 or 4 different ways we can do that are non-traditional? Because it does change coverage, right? Mm-hmm. Traditional flood may not be good against a handful of things, but once you flip it up and now you run slot fade with the sail on the inside, right? Like I'm thinking man match, because that's what I've always run as a DC. Those start to mess with the man match a lot more. We got pretty good at covering traditional flood, but once you enter slot fade and some other things, it starts to break some of our rules. And so I'm fascinated by that, because that's such a good policy to have, is look at different ways and how it affects coverages.
And so, I kind of think about, everybody talks about Jimmys and Joes and not X's and O's, and I know, where the positions where I'm going to have my better players. So that's kind of where I'm thinking, who can I take that can catch a post if it's there, but if not, can still get a defender run off. Or, maybe you're going to play, I forget which one it is, whether it's stubby or stump, but where you lock up number 1 and play palms over 2 and 3. If I just turn around and look for a now screen, a smoke screen, or even run a hitch, like, can I make that corner irrelevant? Can I take, can I take my number 3 or my number 4 best receiver, put him on your best corner out there, and basically, if you want to go 1-for-1, I'm taking your dude away, and you're guarding, a future, not anybody who's going to play college, that's for sure.
An accountant, right?
Yeah, an accountant, and then now you've got my 2 best receivers running, some version of a deep route and a sail route on, another future accountant or teacher, another, somebody else who's not, going to be a D1 player or anything.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And like you said, if you understand the coverage, if this team loves to run stubby to trips, just like you're saying, and their corner's a dude, just, put Johnny the fundraising kid out there, the kid who, sells 50 cards a year. All right, Johnny, get out there, and I want you to run that kid off all night long.
Exactly.
Or, run a hitch and do that. So that's such a smart move when you talk about those things.
Mm-hmm. And, and it, like I said, it doesn't even have to be done out of total 3 wide receivers. Then we've done too is we've done it with the lead swing. That's become pretty popular. Made that the flat route. So you've got your go and your 12-yard out, 10-yard out. Then the flat route is we call it super. Is that super screen? So now you're making it a quads play without having to teach anything new for anybody else other than just getting a lead blocker out there for the swing. Tons of different ways to dress it up, but it's all still read the same. And just then it's on me to activate which variations I think are going to be best for the week. And anytime I can put that on me instead of a 15, 16, 17-year-old kid to try and make the right decisions, I think is a good winning business model.
Yeah.
But Coach, you said something that really stuck with me here, spoke my language. Make the corner irrelevant. I think that's huge in high school football. Obviously, your best cover guys are going to corner. So, we practiced a lot of that, and exactly what you're saying. Try to make that guy irrelevant, run him off, or put him in a spot where he's not going to be able to make an impact in the play. You also talked, Coach, about your Jimmy and Joes and making sure you know that your right players are in there. A lot of coaches don't, when they're drawing stuff up, they don't think about the quarterback's arm and their abilities as a quarterback to make these throws. The deep out especially, or your sail route can be tough for a lot of high school quarterbacks. But being able to change up who runs that and bringing it closer to the quarterback is a big advantage for you.
I totally agree. And I think what's awesome, especially getting number 3 running that sail route, not only does it make it closer, but I think that he gets lost a lot of times in the coverages, especially if you're not playing stubby. Normally teams are playing kind of a version of poach where they're more worried about him coming across the field and not necessarily worried about him going back to the strength. So they've got number 1 and 2 taken pretty good care of. They'll go whenever we run off with number 1, and they'll jump the bubble, because I tend to prefer it with a bubble because we do some bubble screen things in the run game. And so they'll, maybe they come and jump that. Well, then now there's, you don't have anybody intermediate in that area at all. So
especially if you have a good athlete, you can put it a wing, or you got a good tight end. That sail route from a tight location can be wide open, give you a wide open space there.
And another thing that I think helps us with that too is, especially moving into next year, our main 2 drop back plays are going to be flood and Y cross. So I teach the sail route. I still want you to go, especially from a number 2, or even if you're an extended number 3, I still want you to go underneath the outside linebacker. I want you to take an inside release. I want them to think that you're going to run the cross, and then now you break back out to the 3 receiver side, because Y cross is essentially just weak side flood, right? You're going to end up flooding the weak side. So I want the sail route to look just like that. Hopefully the defense starts to go expect that the Y cross, the high cross concept is coming. Then now we're going back the other way.
Matt, we knew it. We got the Y cross as a flood concept. We talked about this earlier. We were like, I'm guessing at some point we're going to hear a Y cross as a flood concept, because it is. I'm with you, Coach. That's defensively, funny enough, that's how I teach it. I'm like, guys, they're flooding, the weak zone. So it's I like that, and I like the idea of making your sail route when you're doing it by 3 look like the Y cross. Like obviously the Dolphins and those people have done that, where it's like the big Y cross return, but it's kind of a slight variation of that, and it's the same thing, especially if you're playing poach or solo, which is the same thing right there. That guy is right. He's, hey, I got to take the Y cross. I'm taking the guy who's on the big over, and then he breaks it back out, and it's kind of that oh shit moment. All I can do is chase that guy down and break up not break it up, but go chase him down and make a tackle at that point. It's irrelevant. You're not breaking up the football at that point. So if there's a good throw, it's go make a tackle and live for the next down.
And normally that guy is so open. Matt, you were talking about the quarterback's arm. Normally he's so wide open, it doesn't have to be a laser, right? Especially if you're using it as a counter to a Y cross play, to where they're trying to play off the Y cross, and flood is the constraint to that. Normally he's naked, so it doesn't have to be a dot. It doesn't have to be a dime. You just got to get it to him.
Coach, are there? You talked about coverages earlier, and I know to an extent flood can be a catch-all. Are there any coverages that you guys don't like seeing with it? Or are there any coverages that you're like, oh yeah, we're going to run this all night, we're going to feast on it?
So for feasting, what I like to do, especially, is getting to, most people call it tray, a tight end trip. So you got tight end and your twins outside of that 3x1. What we see a lot of that in our area is teams play basically banjo with their corner and their safety over 1 and 2, because they want that hard edge outside linebacker outside the tight end. And we see a lot more odd front teams. So they'll just bring that outside linebacker down, because his rule is he sees the tight end, he's outside the tight end no matter what. And so they'll play they'll play banjo over 1 and 2, in and out, with the corner and the safety. So that really, especially thinking about just the post out part of it, is a banjo coverage killer. We can get that safety to come down on the out with the sail, and then throw the post behind him, and then the Y's in the flat for flat control, coming from that tight end position. I love seeing that. That's one of the main reasons. One of the main formations that I put it in to start with was out of a look like that. Man coverage can be problematic, just because, we talked about it beating zones because no coverage just has somebody for all three of those zones. But what I would do then is get in bunch.
Yeah.
And then have good luck playing man to the bunch. You got to zone it in some form or fashion, unless you just got better guys than I do.
Every once in a while we run some. That's the fun thing. I've talked so much with defensive coaches about this, and the man is what we call lock and level. And it's like, I tell coaches all the time, like, look, you can't do it a lot, but you can do it once or twice a game because it'll freak the wide receivers and the quarterback out. If you've been playing some kind of like zone match off of it, and then all of a sudden you lock and level, it'll freak the quarterback out. But you can't do it every down or he'll figure out how to pick you apart. But if you catch him on like a 3rd and 5 when he thinks he's going to get some kind of like zone match and you man match him, it does freak him out. But it's like one of those things, like you get to use it once, guys. Like it'll work one time, but then you may better figure something else out. So.
Yeah, pick your spot.
Yeah, there's something we used to do along the same lines there. We used to have number 2 on the line of scrimmage, motion in number 1 to like a stack, and have 1 run the whip out of that, 2 run the corner, and then 3 would have your sail or your out route. And that kind of set up our shallow concept and everything that, we'd run like that and kind of put the defense in a bind there and not allow them to play straight man and try to chase that whip route or the shallow route, whichever way we had called it.
Yep. I'm hoping to get more of that kind of things, more of that kind of stuff in, just the straight, in motion. And then I think it, like you said, it plays really well, not just off shallow cross, but even off Y cross. If we can get a run and start for the Y cross, still get underneath that outside linebacker, but actually turn that route into a sail, it'll just have defenders' heads spinning.
Yeah, the short's such a good motion. We talked about this a little last night, which will be, if you're listening to this, it will have been the episode last week. But, it took me forever to figure it out, but I learned how to coach it really well defensively because I saw it every day from Matt. So it's one of those things where I didn't know what I was doing until I saw it 7,000 times in a row. Now I feel like I have a great feel for it. But if you're a DC that you're facing that doesn't see it every day in practice, they may be doing this on a Friday night. Like, I'm not sure what to do here, guys. Like, what do we do is if they're going to keep shorting, because it gives coverage away. And if you don't, again, it's the same thing. If you don't have a few change-ups to it, you guys are just going to feast on it. You got to keep the offense guessing.
And you don't have to do a ton out of it, right? Have a runner player or 2 that's with it just so they know it's not just a pass. Oh, you see that? Let's drop 8. Just check to it real quick. A run or 2 just to keep them honest. Maybe a screen. Maybe he's motioning in to catch a tunnel screen, and then having a Y cross with it and a sail route with it, so that they can't, even if he's motioning in, just all right. Well, we know he's going to the other side. That's what the Miami and that Shanahan tree, that the illusion of complexity, what they call it. Every motion, every action has multiple reactions, so you can't just hone in on one.
Yeah, no, I love it. It's 2 things I picked up on there, Coach. First off, you said drop 8, and if you're listening to this podcast and you like drop 8, it's the wrong podcast. So I don't want to lose viewers, but we will never do an episode on dropping 8 ever because I don't believe in it. Like ever. The second thing I was going to ask you, we were talking about the short and the in motion. Have you thought about doing any of the cheetah motion? The out, the short out one now that it's become a little more popular?
Yeah, we did some of it in 7-on-7 last year. The issue that I had with the same side out motion was just taking somebody out of the box. Normally, because it's going to bring, normally it's going to be that wing kind of player, and it's going to take him out of the box. And my wing player last year was more of a fullback type of kid, so he's not going to be, going to motion out and run a rail route with it. But this year, I've got a kid there. I think he's going to be more of true like that H-back kind of kid who can kind of do it all. So I'm excited to kind of have him doing that. I did more of the going across. They call it tracks. So it's like out motion to the other side. So
gotcha, yeah.
So that's what people call it cheetah. I call it in and out. So in, you're staying on the same side. Out, you're staying on the same side, going out that way. And tracks would be you're going all the way, faking like a jet sweep, right? And then now you got something like a rail or a post or even, a dig, running it to a dig and run dagger with it, but to the other side of the formation. So we did that a lot more than going straight out on the same side. We crossed the formation more with it.
Yeah. Well, obviously, once you cross the formation, it creates a whole different shift defensively. So there's
Yeah.
a lot to that. Funny enough, you mentioned dagger because that's what we talked about all last night on
Really?
our episode. It was kind of intermediate deep shots. So we talked a lot a bit. His was a lot of dagger, and then they did mills and some things like that, which are all to me dagger concepts. But it's funny how they all blend in. After we talk a handful of coaches, I'm like, well, these match up, and there you go. So
well, yeah, everybody started playing quarters with the last 10 years ago, and so those are the quarter speeders. I can't remember what I was listening to a while back, but it said, or maybe it was reading, but it said that offensive coordinators like McVay and everything, they absolutely torch cover 3 because it's what they came up seeing, and now a lot of the young coordinators now, we grew up having to be quarters and match quarters and those things, and so that's why mills and dagger are so popular because those are, if you think what are the 2 things that'll give quarters problems, generally those are the probably the first 2 that most people are going to come right to.
Yeah, that's why it's just important to blend it. That's for a while. We didn't do it all in year 1, but I was kind of a quarters palms guy. But I got into running a lot of rip liz too because it was our way to be like, all right, if you're going to run these concepts, we're going to spin rip liz on you at the last second, and it's dead in the water.
Yeah, got to close the post.
Yep. So it's one of those things. But in year 1 we couldn't do it. Right, we were able to do it year 3 or 4. And so just like you're talking about the concept of we have all these great ideas as coaches, but in year 1, especially if you came in June, right, you probably get to install about 20% of your playbook if you're lucky, right? It may be even 10 or 15%. So it's really picking and choosing that baseline for you and then building out and figuring out your beaters from there. Can you just, I'm curious now, I know this wasn't the topic on, can you talk a little bit about that, what you were able to install this year, and then as you're looking to expand it, like how much you think you're able to get in?
So, the hardest thing coming in, actually to me wasn't necessarily the scheme. It was figuring out who can run it, who are going to be the Jimmies and Joes, what can they do, and what can I do to maximize what they're good at while still, keeping it simple enough. So, you wide zone warriors, that's kind of where I started. I was with outside zone. I brought too many variations of that to come in. It was 5 that I installed. I installed 1 each day in the week, if I remember right. But still, we kind of got away from those because figured out our kids were better with gap scheme. They were more of a gap team before I got there, and then getting there so late, just I didn't have enough time to make the combos happen naturally, fluidly, the way that they need to for wide zone, outside zone to be successful. So by the end of the year, we turned into more of a gap scheme team. But I went in with 5 different variations of outside zone. We were going to run GH or GF is what I call it, guard fullback and guard tackle counter, and then we were going to run duo. I felt like we were able to do all those things or schematically because I like especially GT, bash GT as a counter to outside zone. When the defense starts overflowing because they think that that's what's coming, you can present it the exact same way, and then the quarterback generally is going to get a pull with extra blockers coming his way, and then duo for short yardage. And just not having to pull somebody to run a gap scheme run, red zone, short yardage, goal line type situations. In the pass game, had a couple quick games, stick spacing, and then 3-man snag, Y corner. We call it arrow. That's what the West Coast system calls it, but that concept. And then Y cross and mesh are really what we went in with, and it was a totally different offense by the end of the year because we figured out what they were good at and what we could maximize. We were running dagger by the end of the year, weren't really running Y cross very much by the end of the year, but we were running offense, so we weren't going to have a ton of time. We weren't going to spend a ton of time on the pass game because unless it was third and long, we were coming at you.
Yeah, Coach, I love that, and I think when we talk about it, pound for pound, I always tell people, I'm like, look, high school coaches are some of the best football coaches in the country, and I'll die on that hill because, like you said, you're like, I have my offense, I'm good to go, and you get there and you're like, well, shit, I can't do it with these guys. And I'm not saying that was your case there, but we've been some places where, hey, this doesn't work with these guys. Not that they're no good, it just doesn't match them.
And it's not that it didn't match them or anything. We had a week 1 game, like I said, our starting quarterback got hurt. The kid who's going to be my H-back got a concussion, so like. Even the kids that we were planning on that had gone through most of the little bit of the summer program that I got to be a part of got hurt.
Just gone
week 1.
Away, yeah.
I mentioned Westview earlier. We're playing them we played them week 1, and they're probably at least a quarterfinal, if not a semifinal or state championship appearance team in 3A around here. And then in week 2, we turned around and played a team that's, again, in 1A, going to maybe win state. So we figured it out. We played the toughest schedule in 1A in Tennessee across the state, especially because of those two. We get those in our first 2 weeks with a new offense, a new head coach, and we got injured. So yeah, if anybody who had to adapt, we did. But we're real proud of the finish we had. We went 5-1 in our last 6 games, and most of the kids are coming back. So we were talking about being able to build on some things in the off season, and that's why I was thinking flood, because probably play call for play call, I think it was probably our best pass play. I haven't got full analysis of all of it yet, but as far as highest percentage and yards per attempt, I think it was probably our best one by the end of the year.
Yeah, and that's, if we go way back in the Board Drill podcast, we had Coach Aaron Avery on, who's the OC at Bowles here in town in Jacksonville, and he did that same thing. He basically had this huge breakdown of when we were at Oakleaf together, and he's like, look, we ran all these plays, and we looked at it, and we're like, 80% of our yards came off 6 plays. We should probably focus on those 6 plays a little more and quit worrying about all this other crap. And so I think that's such a smart thing to do. And, I don't want to get too much into like self-scouting and things, but that's why you do that. You got to go back and look and say, hey, all these things, I've done it before. I feel like an idiot. I get to the end of the year and I'm like, we ran Texas, which is a pressure, 9 times and we had 7 sacks. Like, why didn't I run this 20 something times? Like, I'm an idiot. So those are always important aspects, but I love just that conversation of adapting to your kids and changing things. And, I don't think it's where other people may kind of look at it like you're crazy. Being able to flip your scheme and change, not mid-year, but as you go throughout the year, is such an important piece to being a high school coach. And I think that's when it tells me that I'm talking to a good coach or not. When I look at a coach who's like, well, we do this no matter what. I'm like, well, enjoy losing unless you have those kids every single year, because it's not going to happen unless you adapt a little bit.
And that's what you said change. I try to think of it as change. I try and think of it as adapting or evolving. Just kind of, what's the next step to maximize the talents that our kids have.
Yeah, it's the Moneyball thing, right? Adapt or die.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Matt, any input here? You're the offensive guy and the O-line guy. I can see you just stewing over there.
I've been sitting here drawing stuff. I'll be honest. I've been sitting here drawing up a stretch now, or wide zone. Everybody has their different terminologies. Coach, you're talking about like having the different getting adjusted to a new group, and you finally get in with the kids and figure out what they can do, and you start losing players to injury. And I know you're at I assume a 1A school is going to be a pretty small school here in Tennessee. I know when I was at a small school and you lose one guy, your personnel there that you're expecting to be able to use is shot, or you're trying to take a kid that would be a younger kid and trying to push him into a role there. How many different personnel groupings are you using there, or are you able to?
So we kind of ended up just with 2 by the end of the year. We had regular and jumbo. So jumbo was kind of the final evolution of our offense this year. We kind of called it our own version of the single wing, where we were running things like outside zone and duo and power and counter out of it, because it's what we were good at. And if we got in a 3rd and long situation, then we would get in regular, get 3 or 4 wide, and throw a flood route, throw a slant wheel, something like that, trying to hit an explosive play. But like I said a little bit ago, if we were in kind of any kind of running situation by the end of the year, that's just what we were at. The back end of our schedule, we knew we were going to be stronger in the trenches than our opponent was, so we just brought the fight right to them. And we think in our last 2 games, I think we rushed for 800 or 900 yards in 2 games just out of it. I mean, because
another question for you. Talked about, you used the terminology sail. I always called it an out route. We were 10 to 12 and breaking out. What are you teaching? Because when I think sail, I think we're, getting more of an inside release, and then we're going to break it back out as kind of a, a speed turn. How are you coaching that intermediate route?
Basically what you just said, we want to take an inside release because I want it to look like the initial stem that we're running across, like a high cross route, light cross. So I want them to get underneath that apex defender and then, creep up like we're going to get behind the inside linebacker. And then just instead of breaking it across, we're going to break it out. I prefer more of a speed turn too. I don't want him to stop and get flat. I, kind of want to get up to 10 and roll to 12 or 15, just kind of based on where you're at and what body type that kid has. But definitely, like I said, going back to that kind of illusion of complexity, I don't want the defense to be able to key in on either of them just based on our release. So get inside underneath the outside linebacker, start to get vertical and roll it out from there, or roll it across if it's the high cross route.
Are you exclusively? Oh, go ahead.
I'd say, so I call it the sail too. If I wanted to run it out, then like you said, they would go vertical and out. But the sail, like you said, to me has those connotations of, multiple angles on the route.
Yeah, you had it kind of drawn up out of pistol. Is that what you're typically running it out of? And are you always sprinting out, or do you have different protections with it?
So I drew up sprint out because we were talking about, kind of how we got it installed.
Yeah.
And the reason that, because we didn't install it right away. It wasn't part of my base install when I came in, but it's what my backup quarterback could do, sprint out and throw that concept. But with, our starting quarterback, he's more of a pocket guy. So we'll sit in the pocket and throw it. But we are going to be in pistol a lot more, just because that's what our running back's good at. He's good at getting downhill, right away, thumping, getting through the line of scrimmage as fast as he can. And so I think that pistol's better for that than being in sidecar. So even in the pistol, we can still pass pro. It just takes a little bit of work to make sure that they don't get in each other's way, and make sure he gets up and out. But it can still happen from the pistol.
And that was my next question, because I've run it out of pistol, and a lot of times those quarterbacks, they don't want to get enough depth immediately, and there becomes an issue between him and the running back. Do you have any key pointers you could give us for running it, the sprint out protection out of the pistol?
Oh, like you said, he's got to get his depth. And the running back, I don't necessarily have him get more vertical. I guess it kind of depends on the way you're protecting it too. Are you having the line reach and run, or are you having them turn back?
I always ran it as I ran my wide zone. We're trying to reach and run backside. We're reaching and, waterfalls, some people say.
Yeah, I've used that term too.
Yeah.
So at that point, then the running back can get a little flatter, as opposed to having to get straight to an outside linebacker or defensive end right away. So that kind of helps the quarterback's depth, in my opinion. He doesn't have to get as deep, because the running back doesn't have to get as vertical, so he can get a little farther out, so the quarterback can stay a little bit flatter too. But generally, we're going to run it as a drop back, just with our starting quarterback. Now, if he were to get hurt and our running back has to move to quarterback, then we'd get into sprint out too. But at that point, if that's where we're at, then we're probably in some form of empty, because we don't have. I wouldn't, if he's the running back, right? He's the running back. He's got a good enough arm to where he can be the backup quarterback, but he's the running back. So we would get in some form of empty, whether it's 3 wide receivers out that we're going to run the flood concept to, and a tight end wing on the backside, so that we have a 4-man surface and a trip surface. We can figure out some things, or even maybe a nub on the backside, tight end, and trips with a wing, so quads, and that wing would pick up that outside linebacker. So just depending on the personnel we have, that's kind of the way that we would probably protect it.
It's diabolical. When you start going empty with a running back there that can throw.
Sure.
All I know we're talking about pass game there, but all I'm thinking about, I'm like, all a Q run just makes me shake my head.
Well, we'd still have a 7-man box with it.
Now, that's what I'm saying.
And then you got to go cover the trips too.
Yeah, coach, trust me.
We had a play that worked pretty well about it's probably back in 2010, 2009, 2008. We would be empty and we would run stretch to the trips.
I'd be in middle school class.
Yeah, stretch to the trips. Shows our age. Stretch to the trip side and bubble number 3. And it was a kind of a quarterback read on the alley defender. So if he's not going to run after the bubble, quarterback's
yeah. So you're talking about what a lot of people call flop reads, like you're RPOing the same side of the run. Yeah,
but
I
it's
love
just
that.
Quarterback run, empty formation.
Oh, okay.
Quarterback running stretch. empty formation, quarterback running stretch, which it was we had a talented quarterback at the time.
Who was your quarterback? Let's go ahead and say it. I got a feeling I know who it is.
Yeah, it was
it Blake?
Yeah.
All right, it was Bortles. Yeah.
But wasn't my design, wasn't my call, but the offensive coaches at the time, they came up with running that and getting him to the edge, and it was like trying to tackle a 6'5", obviously,
baby.
But for what you're talking about and empty, you're really attacking the edge and forcing those defenders to make a decision.
Mm-hmm. I like it.
At that point,
that was pretty fun.
It's like a speed option at that point, basically.
Yeah, basically was.
Yeah, and I like it with gap schemes too, especially the play side of gap scheme, whether it's duo or counter, trying to read that alley defender or read a safety on a glance to a single side receiver.
Yeah,
there's a lot of different ways to mess with defenses. That's what I have a lot of fun doing.
Yeah, we started doing funny things with that safety just to mess with glance. It's like, you're going to sit right here in the glance window at 7.5 yards and just don't move. Just see what he does. That's what we came up with to mess with it. So I do love how we started this entire conversation off about flood. Now we're talking about run fits and RPO off fit. God, I love this podcast. This is so much fun to do this.
Well, like I said, when we came on, normally I'm talking about the run game anyway. So got the pass fix in. Let's get to the good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, look, Matt's a lifetime O-line coach. I'm a DC guy, so that's what I tell people all the time. Like, you can talk coverages to the cows come home, but if you don't run fit, it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm. And we can talk pass concepts all we want to, but if you can't give your quarterback time to throw it, it don't matter either.
Yep. Yeah, no, it's such a perfect thing. So I love it. So, Coach, we can kind of wrap it up here. I love talking about flood. I love what you said about the different variations and everything. And I think that's important for coaches to hear, that is, especially during the offseason, just like you said. I thought it was one of the best tweets I saw right away was, hey, it's offseason, I'm working on variations of this. And that immediately resonated with me, because that's what the offseason's for, right? It's to toy and to tinker with things and see what works, correct?
Mm-hmm. And I've actually even changed stuff in my own mind from when I tweeted that out 2 weeks ago. So.
Well, that's the point of it, is it's your time to get super creative and throw stuff against the wall and see what sticks. Like, it doesn't mean you're installing it in August, It just means that, hey, this is my time to try to get creative, do something outside the box, try something new, at least on the whiteboard. And we would do it all the time. We'd get in the office and I'd be like, Matt, what do you think about this? And he'd be like, all right, well, draw it up against this and draw it up against that. And we would sit there for hours drawing one thing up against everything possible. And we're like, oh, it works? Cool. Okay, no, this gets broken as soon as this happens, so we can't do it. So I think those are the best parts of coaching, is that off season, that those mind games and the toying with it, and see where you can get with your offense and defense. Yeah,
and going back to and getting to watch some film from this past season with a little more objective mind, kind of now that the season's over, seeing what defenses really did to us, because we play a team Friday night and we know we're not seeing them again the rest of the season. Once I review that film from how we played, I'm not watching it. I'm not even watching it really to see what they did at that point. But now, I got the time to go back and see, especially, guys that are in our region, how did they play us in certain aspects? And, we're talking about drawing things up against some of these ideas. That's what I'll be drawing stuff up against, is how do they play us now that they've seen, my offense and game planning for my offense, not what did they do to the offense, the year before us, because we've got totally different players, because that was a massive senior class that graduated. So what are they doing against our players and my offense now that we wouldn't have had that information before the season?
Love it. So, Coach, I got two questions to end it.
Well, hang on. I got one more.
Go ahead,
before you go. It just came back. I had a note on it. Coach, you talked earlier about your terminology, okay, and how you try to make the words fit together, right? Right. So you have groups of plays, and then your quarterback can recognize, oh, it's in this play group. Can you talk a little bit more specifically about that? Because I think a lot of coaches miss on that concept. When we ran flood, our variation we called wave, right? So same idea as what you're doing, but I wanted those players to have a mental picture of what the play was. I thought that was huge. Can you talk a little bit more specifically about your kind of play groupings?
Yeah, so through and through, thinking about the run game, I'm a numbers guy. Especially I feel like I try and pay homage to the Shanahan McVay system. I try and pull words, from from there, like captain for them was one that I put, was one of the names of the plays I put on there. For them, that's double curls with a seam, a go route down the middle. But I'm thinking of captain, that's a kind of term that would kind of go with the flood. And the one that I had it drawn up with would have been like a flood with drive on the backside, where the shallow cross, would become that flat route. Okay, so basically we're just getting that same, who drives a boat. So you're kind of getting that idea of, we're on the water, we've got a flood and a drive concept. The captain drives the boat. So trying to make some different things like that, like you said, to create that mental picture. I've heard people refer to them as buckets. So all of those would fall under that bucket. Like our Y cross concepts, they all have to deal with like windows or lighting, things like that. Just they all would fall under that. Like one of them's shade, one of them would be like blinds or shutter. So just they all have kind of have that mental picture. Like I said, with the quarterback, even he might not know. Obviously, it'd be great if he does know exactly who is everywhere. But I try and tell him, like, you might not have to know. You just know that somebody's going to be there, right? Because that is this bucket that you have. So that's kind of where I'm at in the pass game. And in the run game, like I said, it's numbers and tags from there. 18 is always some version of outside zone to the right. Then there's going to be a tag with it that might alter, like we talked about how earlier, change how we're going to block those other two guys.
Yeah.
But if it's 18, we know it's outside zone to the right. If it's 19, we know it's outside zone to the left. 16, we know it's a gap scheme to the right. It's going to be a power, going to be a counter. But we know it's the front side of the offensive line should know they're blocking down. We got somebody pulling. We got somebody wrapping.
Love it.
Yep. That's
Matt,
what I wanted to hear.
for
That's
you?
awesome. Yeah. I just love the concept of being able to do that and create the images when you're creating your offense. And I think it goes so much further with players.
Yeah, no doubt. So, Coach, 2 questions for you to close it out. First one is, it's off season. Usually people pick a couple teams to do some studies on. Do you have any college or pro teams that you're looking at to do some off season studies on?
Any different than I have been for a while over there on the blog with the, so I'm always, like I said, always trying to study what Shan McVay and their tree are doing. So I'm knocking down every week on the Wide Zone Warriors. I send out a weekly newsletter every Friday.
Yep,
looking for the a breakdown. What were the explosive plays from that system? And that I don't have all of them because there's kind of branches on branches of the trees now. It's been around so long, but I take the Rams, the 49ers, the Dolphins, the Vikings, the Packers, and
Lions?
Texans. The Texans.
Oh, Texans. Gotcha.
Ben Johnson's actually not from that tree. Everybody loves him, but I don't. I'd love
he's going to be the future coach of the
more.
Jags. We love him. We're excited.
I tell you what, I would love it for Trevor Lawrence if he could get Ben Johnson.
I'll cry if he gets hired as the head coach.
I would support you there. But
right,
if anybody wants to know more about any of those teams, be sure to sign up. I send it out every Friday.
Yeah, and it's on your Substack, correct?
Yes, sir.
Is it widezonewarriors.com or what's the actual, is it kind of one of those words?
widezonewarriors.substack.com.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So we'll flash it up. We'll write in the description as well. All right, Coach, we end every podcast with the same question, especially when we have a new coach on. What is the most unique or interesting thing that your team does or a team that you've done in the past?
That would be Jumbo that we did this year, for sure, without a doubt. It's like we said, we called it our version of the single wing. We had a 5-man surface with just a guard and tackle backside, 3 up backs, and a quarterback who was our running back. And we had 5 or 6 plays that we ran out of it, and we said that the defense, they can know what's coming, still got to stop it.
I love it. I know Matt loves it. Matt's a big single wing guy.
Not a big single wing guy.
Oh, I don't even want to hear it.
Ran it a couple times.
Yeah.
I like the power eye better, for what we did. But
I hate the single wing and the wing T. I hope it all dies as a defensive guy.
But even then, we weren't just doing totally different stuff out of it. It was just a different way to present the same things we were already doing. We were still running. We weren't pulling anybody. We tried it once teams started cutting. We started trying to run a little bit of belly and pull a guard with it too. But it was still just, duo, power without a puller, right? Outside zone with some sweet couple, trick play passes in there. We'll run counter, bring those up backs from one side all the way back to the other. But still just the same things we were doing. ISO, we put wedge in at the end just to make sure we were getting our quarterback, straight inside downhill right away. We got him catching the snap on the run. So that was a good way to hit it pretty quick without having to be under center to do it. But yeah, that would be the most unique thing we did, and it was really good for us. We got a couple of ways we're going to expand on that, moving into next year too.
I love it, Coach. Can't wait. That's good. Next year we want to get you on. I want to see some film of it. All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Love it. Love it. Well, Coach, thanks for coming on the show tonight. We really loved having you. Obviously, we'd love to have you back one day, and we wish you best of luck on the off-season study, and can't wait to see what you do in the future.
Appreciate it. I'll definitely be back anytime you have me. Enjoyed it.
Absolutely. For me and Matt signing off, we'll see you next week.